Hi, in this fourth video we will continue with some basic tools inside Max, and starting from the next video we will start doing some small objects in this playlist dedicated for total beginners. In this video I will start by continuing with some selection methods, and then we will move on to something else. First, let's create some objects. I will do Alt W to maximize the viewport, the perspective viewport. We'll create a box, click and drag, click a cylinder, tube, a pyramid. I will go to shapes, create a circle, arc, click drag, then move the mouse. We already know how to create those from previous videos. And maybe a star. Click drag, release the mouse button, then decide the shape of the star, then click, right click. I will create also a light, a target light. Just click and drag, then release. Now don't worry about lights, how we, what they do, how they work. We will do that in other videos. Now just let's create them, and that's it. Maybe in the drop down menu we have different types of lights, so let's go to standard and maybe create Omni Light. Just click and that's it. Maybe a target spot, click, drag, then release the mouse button, right click. Let's create a camera, click on the camera, then click let's say target, click to place the camera, then drag, then release the mouse button. This is the target. The target is the point that the lens of the camera will always look at. Just don't worry about that. Also, we will use the camera in other videos, in future videos. We will use all these in specific projects. Also, in helpers, just click on dummy. These helpers, just without going into details, just know for now that they don't show up in rendering. They are here to help us achieve certain things, but we will also see that in future videos. Okay, first, if I want to select objects by name, see when I click you have these names here. If I want to select objects by name, I can click on this button here, select by name, and you can see all these objects here. You can also press the H key on the keyboard. It's a shortcut for the same window. Here I can click and then press Ctrl to click multiple objects, then click OK. I have 3 objects selected. Now I will click here in the empty space to deselect, then H again. Now let's say I want to select from here to here. I can click the first one, then press Shift, then click this circle 001, and all the objects in between, they are highlighted. Then I will click OK, and all these objects are selected. Again, deselect, H again, Now let's say I don't want to see uh, shapes in the list here, so I can turn off the display the shapes button. So now the circle and arc and the star, they don't show up here. I will turn them on again. Let's say I don't want to see geometry, so I will turn it off. Now I don't see the tube, the box, the cylinder. On again. And also for the lights and cameras and helpers, etc. Now also for the selection, let's say I want to drag a selection. If you have many objects in the scene with different types, and let's say you want to select all the lights, and you don't want just to click and just control click, and maybe in a complex scene sometimes it's difficult. So what you can do is you can go here to selection filter and say you just want to select lights. By default it's all. You can set it to lights. Now I can drag a rectangle over all the objects and only the lights are selected. Now click outside to deselect. I will switch to geometry and only these objects are selected, and you can try yourself the other options. Don't forget to set it back to all. Okay, for now, for the selection, well, I think it's enough for now. And let's say now for the display, let's say I have a very complex scene and I don't want to see, let's say, lights in the scene. I would just want to make my scene less complex so I can work more comfortably. So I can go to display and switch off lights. As you can see, I don't see the lights in the viewport. But there is something you should understand also, and remember that if you hide the lights like this, it doesn't mean that they will not lit the scene. They will still, their effect will still be here. They will still be lights. They will still casting lights in the scene as usual. This is just for the viewport to be less crowded, and that's it. So I will turn them on again. I can do this for the camera, for geometry, shapes, helpers, etc. Now another thing. For now we are creating. I will choose the cylinder, for example. Go to this modify panel. Here we have the radius and the height. As you can see now, I'm working in generic units. Here, as you can see, there is no unit. There is no real world unit like meter or inches or feet or whatever. If I want to work with real world units, I go to customize, units setup, and click, let's say, personally I use matrix, so I click matrix. Now I can have this here. I can enter the values in, let's say, in meter or centimeters, millimeters, kilometers. Let's say I like to input my values in meters. Personally, I like that because I work generally in medium and big objects. I don't work like in jewelry or stuff like that. So if I don't wanna put it millimeter, because if I wanna create a door with 2 meters, I don't wanna type let's say 2000 or something like that. I can just type 2. So I can now click OK. As you can see now, there is this M here, means meter. Now this cylinder is 0.3189 meter. It's like it's close to 32 centimeter. I can make it 32 by typing 0.32. The height is I can make it 2 meters. Also, this works for moving. If I right click the move tool, also now I can move things in real world units. Another small tip now, just a quick tip, when you select objects, it's better to be in the select mode, not select move, select rotate, or select scale, just for a simple reason. If you are in the select and move mode, you might want to select an object, but maybe your mouse moves a little bit while you're selecting, and you just shift your object slightly. So it's more safe to click on select object. It's just so you can just select freely without this risk of transforming your objects by mistake. The shortcut for this is Q. We already said that move, rotate, and scale, they are W, R, and E. The select only, it's Q. Okay, now let's talk about copying objects. Let's say I want to create a clone from this cylinder. I can right click, choose clone. I have two options, copy and instance. First, let's start with copy. I can choose the name for the copy here. By default, it will increment the original objects. Here it's cylinder 001. This one is cylinder 002, but you can make it whatever you want. Click OK. Now the newly created object is the one that is selected now. You can see this here, and it's in the same place as the original object. I can right click the move tool, and I can offset on the Y, let's say, axis. I will undo this. Let's say I want to shift it in the Y axis, let's say by 1 meter in this direction, the negative direction. So I can do let's say -1. Press enter. Now I'm gonna do something else. I'm gonna right click this one and choose clone, but this time I'm gonna say instance and click. As you can see here, it's incrementing 003. Click OK. Now I will move this in newly created object. Now, as you can see, because this is an instance from this one, you see this button here. Before it was grayed out. If I select this one, it's grayed out. I cannot press it. But here I can see this make unique is active now. Now, what does it mean that this? What does it mean to create an instance and not a copy? That means if I change the parameters of any of these two, both will change at the same time, because these two are instances. Let's say I select this one and change the height, both will change. But if I don't want these two to be instances, I can choose one of them and press the make unique button. Now it's grayed out. Now this is a unique copy. Now if I change the radius or height, it will not affect the second one. What else can we talk about? Okay, for this uh, copying thing, I think it's clear for now. There is something else. Yes, I wanted to talk about this copying thing. Um, I will delete this one and then right click, clone instance. Uh, as we said, if I change the parameter of one, the second one will be affected. But if they are being instances, doesn't affect the transformation tools. When I say transformation tools, means rotate, scale, and move. So if I move one, the second one will not move. If I rotate one, the second one will not rotate. And if I scale one of them, the second one will not be affected. Only when I change these parameters. And there are also other things that there are instances in, but for now, just I think this is enough for now. Don't worry about other things. Okay, and now let's talk about something very. Okay, and before continue, okay, to stay with the cloning thing, I'm gonna delete this one. Sorry, but I'm remembering things. I can, if I, another way to copy an object is to click it, choose one of the transformation tools, let's say move. I can place my mouse on the Y axis, press shift, and then click the left mouse button, then move, and the same dialog will show up here. I can choose copy or instance. I will try the box now. I can go to rotate now. I press shift, then let's say I will rotate on the Z axis. Now I'm pressing the shift. Now I can click and rotate. So now I'm rotating and creating a copy at the same time. Also this dialog will open. Click OK. I will choose the tube. I will try it with the scale. Place my mouse in the middle so I can scale uniformly in all directions. Then press shift first and then click. Now I'm creating a new object and scaling it at the same time in one operation. Okay. Now I will delete all these objects, drag a selection over everything, press the delete button, press Z to zoom in, zoom extend. Now we'll talk about something very important. It's called snap. Snapping will help you to be precise when you place objects. Let's first, I will create a box, then another box. Let's say I want to place this vertex. Now in the future, when we start to do some projects, we will change the nature of these boxes, the nature of the geometry, if it's a box or cylinder or whatever. And instead of having our objects be parametric, you know, only where we can only control them using just few parameters. In the future, we will learn how to convert these to something else, different nature, different type of objects, where we can enter their sub-object elements like vertices, segments, faces, and start to manipulate them manually. Now just know that every edge has two vertices. So there is a vertex here and here and here, and when we change the nature of this object in the future, make it something else, we will be able to see them. Now for now, just know that they are there. So let's say I want this vertex here to be placed exactly here on this vertex. So first I turn on snap. To do that, I can click on this button, snaps toggle, or I can use the shortcut on the keyboard, which is S. But now I need to know what type of snap they are available. They are on at this moment. So I right click this button. At this moment, vertex snapping is on. So this is enough for me now. I can close the dialog and make sure that it's on. Select this object, move, and now, as you can see, when the mouse approaches the snap sign, the vertex snap sign flashes. See how it flashes. Now, when it flashes, just click. Sorry. When you see the mouse icon changes to move, and at the same time the vertex snap is flashing, just click. Now you are holding the object with this vertex. Now approach to this vertex, and as you can see, the other one flashes. You don't need to get more closer, just release the mouse button now and it snaps. Let's say I will control Z. I will undo this. Now let's say I want this vertex to snap on the middle of this edge. So I right click. I keep my vertex because I want to hold this object by its vertex, and I choose midpoint, close. So I will move my mouse here, and then now I can click, and then when I move the mouse, as you can see, when I approach the middle of any segment, it flashes. So I'm gonna place it here. I will undo again. There are many types of snap. Also, you have you have the you can snap on the edge. That means I can hold the objects at any point on its edge. As you can see, it is all flashing, all the segments. So I can click and I can place it on anywhere on this segment, or I can move it close to the vertex, and when I see the vertex snap, the cross sign flashes, I can release. It's more practical when to never turn on all snap, because many of them will flashes at the same time, and it will be difficult for you to know which snap you are using now. So try to use those that you need at this moment, and clear the others. You can press this button here to clear all, and then choose the one that you want. I will undo this. Let's see. Okay. I will create a line now. If I want to create a straight line vertically or horizontally, I can press the shift key. Now as you can see, when you move the mouse button, it's going horizontally or vertically. So I can click. I can start a new one or right click and then right click again to turn off the line creation button. Now let's say I want to create a perpendicular line to this line, so I can click perpendicular line, click, don't drag, just click. Dragging will create a smooth line. We will see that in the future, but now for now just click, move the mouse button, and as you can see, the perpendicular snap icon will flashes. You can, the moment it flashes, you can just click, and now you have perpendicular line. What do we have? Also, we have you can try them yourself. Now, for now, let's say face. There is something important about this. Now, I will talk about it now. I will turn off perpendicular. Just keep the vertex and face. I will line tool is active, so I can click here and then move my mouse. As you can see, there are like two triangles. Suddenly you see like an edge here. You have to understand that another concept, that under the hood everything in Max is made of triangles. Even here, if you see that this polygon is made of 4 edges, under the hood this polygon was built using 2 triangles. This is the hidden edge. Now there is a way that you can see the hidden edge and make it a normal edge. I already made a video about this, you can check it if you like, but for now just know this fact, that everything in Max is built using triangles. So I can snap on the face, this triangle or this triangle. When I click, then right click, I will press F3 just to show you that it's not inside the box, it's on the face. The snapping works with um, sorry, snapping doesn't work with scale. When you scale, when you scale, it doesn't actually work. Scaling doesn't use the snap feature. Now I right click to cancel. Okay, for the other stuff, let's see, I can snap on the grid points. If I turn on grid, I will turn off the vertex and face, only the grid line. I will press the T on the keyboard to switch to top viewport. Now I'm on the perspective. T is shortcut for top, L is a shortcut for left, and F a shortcut for front viewport. So I'll click on T, I'll right click grid point, and then I will click line. As you can see, I'm snapping on the grid points, so I can click. This is useful. You can use the grid points as guidelines to create shapes. I will press the P on the keyboard to switch back to perspective. if I want to zoom in on this one while it's selected, I can press the Z, like we already saw that in the other video, the previous video. I think the video, the lesson number 1. Um, okay, for the other types of snaps, you can just try them out. I will talk about the pivot point later. What I will, before using the pivots, the snapping for to the pivot point, pivot snap. I need to explain what is the pivot point, and maybe after explaining that, we can try the snap to pivot. Okay, for now, about another kind of snapping. It's here we have something called angle snap toggle. I will turn off the snap toggle. You already know how to rotate an object. I will click this one, press the E on the keyboard, then I will rotate it on the Z axis. You can see there is a readout here to show you the amount of rotation. But let's say, okay, while I'm rotating, I can, while the left mouse button is pressed, I can press the right mouse button at the same time to cancel my operation. Now let's say you want to rotate with a certain increment without any decimal. Let's say you want to rotate by 5 degrees, exactly 5 degrees, no decimals, like 5, 5, 5. You can press the angle snap toggle. The shortcut on the keyboard is the A. So I will now rotating on the Z axis. As you can see, it is jumping by 5 degrees. If I want to change this default of 5 degrees, I can right click here in the grid and snap settings, options. I have this setting here, angle. I can make it, let's say 15, then close. Now it's jumping by 15 degrees. Right click, I will put it back at its default of 5. Now for the grid lines again, I will now select everything, right click, hide selection, T, top viewport. Now, as I said, you can use the grid points to create shapes. And by default, if I right click here the grid and snap settings, I can go to grid, to home grid. I can control the spacing between those rectangles. This way I can choose the spacing, the dimensions of these rectangles, and then use them to create my shapes. Let's say I want the spacing to be 10 centimeters, so I put 0.1. Now I can click line and then press the snap, turn on snap, then right click and okay, go to snap here and make sure grid points is on. Now I can click here. If I want my second point to be 20 centimeters in this direction vertically, I can click, okay, this one is 10, then this one is 20. This one is 10, 10, 10, then let's say 40, etc. Right click and then right click. This is for snapping. Press P for the perspective, Z, zoom extend, zoom selected. And now for the orbiting, something that we didn't talk about, when I will create some objects again. Cylinder, pyramid. We said that when you want to orbit, you can press the Alt and then press the middle mouse button and then orbit. By default, this orbit happens around the middle, around the origin. Let's say you want to orbit around a specific object. Let's say this one. Here, I can go here and click. There is many options here. This one, it's called, sorry, not this one. This one. It's called orbit selected. So if I choose this object and then press the Alt and press the middle mouse and start to orbit, as you can see now, the orbit is centered around this object. And this is very useful. Okay. Now another thing we need to talk, like we said before, we need to talk about the pivot point. So let's click the box. Notice how the box is created. When I click and drag, you feel like it is created starting from a certain point where you see those three axes. This pivot point here for the box, by default, it's in the bottom and the middle. And starting from Max uses this pivot point to move, rotate, and scale the object. If I click move, as you can see, the move axis is exactly on that pivot point. So when I move, it's like I'm dragging the object from its pivot point. Also, if I click rotate, I'm rotating the object around its pivot point. Also, if I choose scale, I'm scaling it from this point. But I can change this behavior by changing the placement of the pivot. To do that, I can go here to hierarchy panel, click affect pivot only. Now I can click move, click snap, make sure not the grid point, I need the vertex. I can press in the middle here so I can grab the pivot point and move it in all directions. Okay, I will grab the pivot point, snap is on, and I will place it here using Vertex Snap. Now I don't forget to turn off the affect pivot only. Now I will choose rotate, and now I'm rotating the object from this point. This is important if, let's say, if you want to animate rotating if you want to animate the rotation of a door, for example, you can play around with you can change the position of the pivot point, and so you can change the point around which the object rotates. Also, if I want to scale now, if I press R for scale, the scaling happens from this point on. As you can see, the object is not growing from this direction. Another thing to talk about now, before we move on to the next uh, subject, uh, I said there is something called uh, snap to pivot. So if I okay, um, turn on snap to pivot, close, turn snap on. If I want to move this object, click move, use vertex snapping. If I want to move this object, use I want to place this vertex on the pivot point of this one. I can click, drag, and then when the pivot point flashes, as you can see, when the pivot point flashes, uh, you see like all, it's like there is a, it's like a bounding box flashes around the object. The bounding box of the object flashes. This way you can know that what is flashing now. If you have more than one snap type is on, you can know that when you see this kind of, like a bounding box flashes out, you know that this is the pivot point flashing. Pivot snapping is the one that it is flashing now. So now I can release the pyramid, and as you can see, this vertex snaps to the pivot point, the new location of the pivot point that we choose. I will do Control Z. Now let's say you want to set back the pivot point to its default. You can click Affect Pivot Only and Reset Pivot. So now it's back again here. Also, you have this option that you can place the pivot in the geometric center of the object. In the case of the box, it will be placed in the middle of the box. So I can click on this button here, center to object. Remember, always turn off the Affect Pivot Only. I will reset the pivot to its original default place, turn off Affect Pivot Only. Now the last thing I want to talk about is something called Auto Grid. It is very useful to create an object that starts from the face of another object. As we said before in the previous videos, that any object you create by default, even if your mouse is here, it will be created in a very far distance, but it will be created on the home grid. Now you have to think that, you have to imagine that this home grid is extending to the infinity. So anytime I create anything, it's always on the home grid. But let's say I want to start my box or other object from this face, from this polygon. I can click, let's say I will click cylinder, click auto grid. As you can see now, when my mouse moves over a polygon, it's like now the mouse has kind of a sensor. It detects the presence of faces. So now, as you can see, the red and green axes are parallel to this face. So when I click to set the radius, then release and drag, now right click, the cylinder is created perpendicularly to this face. This is very useful to create objects that lies that that, that start on the faces of other objects. I can I will create a box. Auto grid is on. As you can see, the X and Y are parallel to this. It's like you are creating a home grid, a custom grid that replaces temporarily the home grid, and your box is created on this temporary grid. Now I can create a cylinder on this box. And I think this is enough for now. Starting from the next video, we will start to do some small objects. There will be other tools to learn, but we will do that using by doing small objects, simple objects, and it will be more interesting. And for now, thank you for watching.